Energy is essential to everything, really. A world without energy is impossible. Everything relates, is affected by, and contributes to some kind of cycle or system of energy. It is extraordinarily rich in the environment, and biodiversity is essential for it to thrive through efficient transfers. Through photosynthesis, light energy is converted to chemical energy for other organisms to acquire, therefore sustaining a healthy ecosystem. But this cannot happen if an ecosystem's health is poor and degraded. This cannot happen if an ecosystem is being literally divided. It will not happen if habitat fragmentation continues to occur. So, what is habitat fragmentation? It is a problem caused by geological processes in which an environment's physical layout slowly changes over time and is broken up into pieces or patches of sorts. It is significantly influenced and contributed to by human behaviour. I mean, look at deforestation, urbanisation, farming, and all these destructive renovations of natural land. Look at them and you will see patterns. Not just patterns of repetition of actions, but literal patterns in nature, from the organised removal of chunks that people were taking out of the environment. Such clear angles, defined edges, these shapes, they're not natural, and they weren't always there. But see, habitat fragmentation can be a natural thing. It barely seems like it because every human action now is indirectly contributing to damage. But way before major innovations such as the Industrial Revolution, habitats would break apart naturally. While it still was a negative thing, severity of its outcomes weren't nearly as extreme. Signs of global warming due to habitat loss, fragmentation, and pollution are evident in studies from as soon as the early 1800s, but was met with curiosity rather than concern. However, the Industrial Revolution was some 100 years ago, and since then, it has been getting critically worse. And it was out of curiosity in 1956 when American scientist Dr. Charles David Keeling began measuring levels of CO2 in air samples, and noticed increased patterns the longer his studies progressed. One of these being that CO2 concentrations were gradually rising by every year due to fossil fuels, like that in vehicles and equipment used to separate more forest. That led to increased CO2 from lack of filtering plant coverage. That then led to further damage, which in short meant more CO2, less plants, less biodiversity. We put it there, we started this fire, and it is still burning to this day. In the current day, humans and livestock factor over 95% of all Earth's mammal biomass. This means the combined biomass of all wild animals is less than 5%. What does this tell us about our current state of biodiversity? 35 years worth of diverse studies on habitat fragmentation has shown that it reduces biodiversity in an ecosystem by 13 to 75% and weakens various key functions such as food, shelter, clean air, and clean land due to decrease in biomass and disruption of various energy cycles. Biodiversity is undoubtedly one of the most important parts of biology, so if it keeps declining due to things such as habitat fragmentation, so many species and things could suffer from it. Say, imagine it's your first day in a big new school and each subject is separated into different buildings spread across the campus. You're not familiar with the layout of the school, but you've been on orientation, so you have a bit of an idea of where to go. Suddenly, right as you're in 5th period, a massive earthquake happens and the area in between each building completely changes. The paths get torn apart and the map you have is nothing to how the school looks now. You're lost and you desperately need to get to science because it's your favourite and last class of the day and you depend on your grades to survive, but you can't because the way there is too unfamiliar. And worst of all, if you were caught lost and vulnerable outside of class, you'd no doubt be snatched up by your fiercest predators, teachers on duty. This is a bit of an example of how animals subject to habitat fragmentation struggle with its effects. It baffles them and interferes with their ability to interact in different relationships and acquire resources and materials found in diverse areas that they depend on to survive. The changes also leaves them with less habitat to thrive in and more overall perimeter of the fragmented environment, forcing them to cross into the unfamiliarity between each isolated section and exposing them to threats such as dehydration or starvation due to lack of feasible nutrients, vulnerability of land to invasive pests and introduced species, vulnerability of prey animals, decrease in biodiversity, community structure, composition, organization, and richness, and so on. After humans exploit and poison land, we leave it with little left to give. So how do we try to give back? Growth, resilience, energy, support? What do we give? Or what do we do to reverse the negative effects of our behaviour? There are plenty of things that have already been done, and this can include fauna crossings. Fauna crossings are unbroken strips of land as an under or overpass, complete with rich vegetation and railings. They go over disruptions like a road to allow species to travel safely from one side to another. This allows them to uphold their part in relationships of an ecosystem on each side, maintaining it through the fulfillment of their roles and preventing deterioration and isolation. In 1996, on the Trans-Canada Highway, 2 wildlife overpasses were built to address this issue, followed by more further on. Everywhere else was fences, preventing animals from colliding with vehicles. This project was a huge success, bringing down animal fatality and injury by over 80%. This project also inspired similar projects in other major countries. Another would be migratory corridors, such as salmon cannons. The salmon cannon was created in 2014 by Whoosh Innovations. It was made to whoosh migrating fish over dams and structures and from one place to another. While it sounds comical, it's actually safe, gentle, quick, and very cost-effective, costing 50 to 80% less and having lower mortality rates than the fish ladder, another viable solution. Like the fauna crossings, it allows safe travel and the fulfillment of their roles, especially in seasonal reproductive patterns of fish. Solutions include habitat compensation and connecting the fragmented sections of the habitats through rehabilitation and revegetation projects.